So here's the situation at hand. As you can see, this house on this back half at least is balloon framed, meaning these studs on the 2-story house are going all the way from the floor all the way to the ceiling without a break. So these are 20-foot 2x6s, and I don't know if this is better or worse. I've heard it said both ways, the balloon framing, type where it does this. But nevertheless, this is what we're working with, and I'm going to go back with the same balloon framing when I frame for these new window openings. And then real quick before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know, how do I know what to frame my rough openings to? Now the rough openings, if you don't know, are the basic, rough framing of what the finished window is gonna go into. So how do I know those dimensions? Well, backstory here, I have in front of me the 100-year window plans for Whole Millworks 100-year window. Brent was nice enough to give these to me and let me use them to build these windows. So I had several people asking me, hey, can I have those plans too? Because I already mentioned this. I ethically can't give them to you. I just don't feel right doing it because this is a product that he sells. And I really don't even want to say, reach out to him and ask, because then I feel like, it's like, hey, Richard told me you're giving away these plans. I think he just did it as a friend thing to be like, hey, yeah, here, try it out. They're not going to be built to the quality of how they build them, but I'm going to try it. And that's going to be, in the future, because these are going to take a while to build. That is how I know what to make my rough openings to. And that's, it's kind of obvious. You want to know the size of your window before you frame for it. In this case, I could kind of make it anything because I am building the windows, but this has all the construction details that I need, and that's what we'll be going off of. So the first thing I do, of course, is get the existing studs out of the wall, and I was grinding off the nails there just to kind of clean everything up. Now I am going to figure out the center of this wall, and I'm taking into account my casing that's going to be on that door there to the right, and the 3/4 inch plywood that I'm going to wrap around the mantle framing. So I'm going to center off those 2 parameters and just lay everything out. That'll tell me where my king studs need to be. Now here I am putting blocks in. I'm nailing these blocks to an existing king stud, and these are going to space my new king stud and allow me to get the proper centering. And here I'm taking my laser measuring tool and measuring from top plate to bottom plate, and that'll give me my new king stud length. So now that I have that king stud cut and I have my blocks in place, I can go ahead and put it in position and get it nailed in. And once I have that one nailed in, I can go ahead and start working on the other side. This side was a little tricky because I had to take out a little bit more drywall and just remove some insulation in there, but it wasn't bad at all. So now I can begin taking out the remaining existing studs, get those out of there, and just get this other one ready to accept blocking. So I'll do the same exact thing that I did on that first one and put blocks in. These blocks are smaller because the distance didn't need to come over as much to get centered, and then I nail my king stud in. One thing I forgot to record was installing the jack studs onto the king studs. You can see them here in this video where I'm doing the cleanup, but I was actually meaning to record the installation of those and not cleaning up the mess. Just put my 2 jack studs in. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. The next thing on our list here is to go ahead and measure the length of our header, get that built and installed. And I know like some people might be thinking like, whoa, like is it okay to take those studs out? It's definitely a load bearing wall, right? It's exterior, but we're taking out less than 4 foot. And when we're all said and done, we are going to redistribute that weight using headers and cripple studs. So I'm not really going to say yes, it's okay. I think personally it's fine as long as you're not taking out a giant, like, hey, let's take out a 10-foot section here, and then I think then maybe there's a lot of weight up there, it might not be good. But I'm just using common sense here, and I'm going to rebuild this to make it structurally sound. So I think we're good. So I've got my pieces cut for my header right here. What this consists of is 3 2x6s and 2 1/2-inch pieces of plywood. I just use scraps that I have, ripped down to 5.5 inches. So when everything gets sandwiched together, it all equals 5.5 inches, which is how wide a 2x6 is. So when I push it against the sheathing, it'll be flush out here with the existing edge of the boards. So what I'll do is I'll start with a 2x6 here, a 1/2-inch sheet of plywood after that, another 2x6, and all I'm doing here is really just making sure all the edges are lined up, everything sits flush. And the next sheet of plywood, and finally the last 2x6. Using 3-inch nails, so that will definitely sandwich this thing together. Now I need to pull a measurement from the bottom of this down to, I believe it was 64 inches. I'm going to double check the plans. And then that's where I will make my rough seal. Now, one other thing that comes to mind is that this sheathing right here, it's really loose because obviously I have siding on this house. It's finished. I can't go on the backside and shoot my sheathing into my new framing, but you got to think too, this is all coming out. Basically everything you see here is going to be removed because it's going to be a window. So even though this is a little loose, it doesn't matter. And then when I do cut that out, I can then shoot into the framing because I'll have that exposed. And then real quick, I forgot to mention this when talking about these jack studs, but the way I got those heights determined for those is I just followed the height of these on the existing door, because I want those headers to line up, because I want my casing and reveals to line up. Of course, this casing will actually turn into like a mullion style because it's so close to that transom, but I still want the reveals to check out and be, you know, a solid line across. So that determined the height of these two jack studs for me. We are going to come down 64 inches. So 64 inches there, and then 64 here. And let me just check this way real quick. Yep, we're good. So if I'm gonna have 2 seal plates here, then I need to subtract 3 inches from that, and I can cut all 4 of my cripple studs to that dimension. And then this is pretty straightforward. We'll have 1 on each side. And then for these final ones, I'll just measure. We got 39. These are going to be spaced 12 inches apart. And we'll just measure across here and cut 2 of these. All right, there we have it, folks. I framed my first rough opening for a window in my entire life. I think I did pretty good. Wasn't too bad. But yeah, this thing looks a little wide for what you're seeing here, but this thing is gonna come in like 3.5, 4 inches on each side because the weight pocket for the historic window is counterbalanced, so there has to be basically a cavity in the window jamb to house that pocket. So it'll be a little bit more narrow and basically just as tall as you see it here. I'll have to look at the plans, but I think it shrinks more in the rough opening than, or width-wise than height-wise. So yeah, looks pretty sweet. The next thing I need to figure out, well, there's a couple things. This is where my exterior light used to be. I'm gonna have to relocate that, but I don't know where, so that's gonna be a little tricky. So if you have any ideas on where that could go, let me know. I could put it up higher, but that's kind of weird because I don't know, it needs to I feel like it's perfect right there, so I don't know. We'll figure that out. And then I need to figure out, basically I'm gonna duplicate this right above this, but where? I gotta determine where, and that's like more of an exterior question. I've seen some pictures, what I like, and they're kind of like more at the top. So I gotta figure that out. And then the other thing is I can now sort these wires out. Now that this is in, I can get all that sorted out. Really, this was the main one. And then next time we'll pick up in the next video, figuring out the height of that one and what exactly I decide there. Any tips, information that may be helpful, leave it down in the comments for me and others who may be watching. And as always, appreciate you guys watching. I'll catch you in the next one.